Let's jump right in. So welcome everyone to ADP List's first Tech Hustle event. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Just a little background. Tech Hustle is a series of sessions featuring leaders from big tech to provide insights, learning from resources in design, managing product for growth. So the goal is to learn from global leaders who are creating disruptive products through innovative methods. So I'm just going to go a little bit into ADP List for those who are not familiar with ADP List. We are a global community based on genuine connection. Our mission is to foster an inclusive space and supportive network for designers to come together, learn from each other, and strive to be better. And we have mentors and designers from companies like Apple, Spotify, Lyft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Netflix, and so many more. So we have some really cool milestones that we have hit. ADP List has over 3,000 mentors currently. We've hosted over 12,000 one-on-one sessions, over 100 events, and in over 70 countries. So that's a lot and a lot to be proud of. And so you guys, I kind of just want to get really quickly into some housekeeping for this event. The event is going to be recorded. And so by attending, you grant consent to that, which means no hate speech, no discriminatory behavior, please. We don't got time for that. We will be taking a group selfie, and I'm going to facilitate that towards the end of the talk. And please, at the end, post your takeaways on social media by tagging ADP List and hashtag Tech Hustle. So with that said, we're going to just jump into our main speaker, Mosope, who's going to introduce himself. Actually, sorry, before that, you guys don't know me. So I'm Ari. I'm a UX designer. I'm currently working at Edward Jones. I am a New Yorker native, so that's why I was calling out all the New Yorkers in the chat. And if you ever meet me in real life, I am very keen on pointing you to just the right restaurant. I'm very passionate about mentoring, very passionate about ADP List, love learning from and with people, and I'm excited to connect with you all and hear from our speaker tonight, Mosope, about enterprise design. So now with that said, Mosope, I'll hand you the floor.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So let me quickly share my screen and I'll give some quick introductions about myself. This is weird. Okay, give me 1 second. Having some technical challenges here. Just quickly share a portion of my screen. Okay. Yeah, let me try again. Oh yeah, for some reason, it's not showing the screen for me to share.
Well, in the meantime, while Mosope handles that, can everyone kind of come off camera really quickly? I want to try some screenshots. So if you feel comfortable coming off camera. Yes, Elham, I see you. Zainab, hey, hello. Oh, you guys are coming off camera real quick. Why was y'all hiding in the first place? Hello, people. Hey, Tracy. I think you say you're from Brooklyn. I remember. I see you. Hi, Connor. I'm just shouting people out randomly now. Hey, Natalia. Okay, you guys ready? While Mosope handles the presentation, I will try to take screenshots of as many pages. There's a lot of you. There's 3 pages worth of people. So I'll tell you guys when, okay? All right. We'll count down from 3. 3, 2, 1. Say cheese. Woo. Okay. Okay, page 2. Y'all are all still on camera, page 2. What's going on? Let me go to page 3. Page 3. And let's see. Does anyone want to come off camera? Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, Mosope, are you ready on your end?
Mosope will be right back. He had a little bit of technical difficulties, so 1 second.
Thank you so much, everyone.
There he
Can
is.
everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, sorry about that. Technology kind of knows when you're trying to do something urgently, like when you're trying to print something, like computer just freezes. That's what is kind of happening, but I am back. Thank you so much, guys, for being patient. And I'll be talking today around designing for enterprises. And to give an introduction about myself, my name is Mosope, and I'm currently a product designer at Facebook. So in today's presentation, I'll quickly walk you through an introduction. We'll do a quick poll because I like to just kind of gauge everyone here in the room. And we'll talk about what enterprise design is, enterprise design versus consumer design. Sometimes you must have heard out there. Some unique challenges in the enterprise space and how we as designers, I'm hoping that at the end of this conversation, I'm able to, convince many people to want to dive into the enterprise space, lead the charge. But yeah, how we can make designs in the enterprise space. Okay, so my name is Mosope. I'm currently a product designer at Facebook. I'm really super passionate about easy to use and accessible technology. And you can see my little avatar over here. And my experience, spans like a couple of years. I started my career as a freelance graphic designer, then pivoting my career into as a visual designer, working at within e-commerce technology. And I started my enterprise career at KPMG, a consultancy company, as an accounting firm. And I currently work at Facebook as a product designer, working within the business space at Facebook. And we have a quick poll that is running right now. So, like if you can, I'll put some information over there, that'll be really very helpful. I can see we have people that have heard about enterprise design before. Majority of people are just hearing about this for the first time. And, we have experienced people also too in the house. So I'm looking forward to making this, a very engaging session and, hoping everyone can learn as the session goes on. Alrighty, I think we can also a lot of people are putting, if not putting your response there, that's pretty important. So we can share the results on the call as we go on, but I would also continue with the presentation. Okay, so I want to take you guys down, I want to take you down memory lanes. When I joined, my first company when I joined as an enterprise designer, I walked into the building. It was an amazing building. I'd always worked more on the consumer space, e-commerce and all that. So, corporate America, I just moved to Canada. That was 2019. And in my first meeting, I got into, a boardroom meeting with executives like this. I'm just here oh, wow, what is exactly happening? And at this particular meeting, there were different stakeholders, senior people in the company, junior people in the company. People were here, talking about the particular product that we wanted to build, sharing ideas, saying so many things. And the stakeholders knew what they wanted to do. They knew the problem space. And as I was there just listening and trying to really understand, because, it's a very socialized space. I don't understand how things go down there. It was an accounting space. I was kind of wondering to myself, so what do you need me to do then? You guys seem to kind of have figured everything out. I want to conduct research to really understand the problem. Why should I conduct research if you guys seem to really know everything? And I had to pull myself back and say, hey, this is business as usual. I understand I'm here, with these guys that they've been working at the firm for about 30 years, 20 something years, talking about this, but I have a point to make here as a person that is a specialist in terms of user experience. And I then realized that, some of the products that we're trying to designed for, or the products that our users were using formerly, they look something like this. So if you've, it looks this, some of these tools look like, Mavis Beacon or Microsoft Office had a child and they just spit something out there, and people use these tools day to day. And there are even other tools that people use that are even, I wouldn't say worse than this, but that have different experiences than this. And this picture is from Google. I don't know what product this is in reality. Which brings me to, what exactly is enterprise user experience design? And if this is the first time you're hearing about it, enterprise user experience is the design of products for people at work. Now, within the consumer space, like, you use apps like Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Wealth Simple, like, you can name all the different TikToks over there. Those applications are consumer apps. They're apps that, you use at your own time. For enterprise design, these are applications that people use at work. They use it to complete their day-to-day task. Most times, these are, the products that we design for, they're mostly like, like for some desktop platforms, even though now the industry is changing to be more of the web platform. And examples of enterprise products include healthcare software, like, the software that a nurse or a dentist will use in their day-to-day work. Internal banking software, if you go to the bank or you call the customer service of the bank, the software that the customer service agent uses to track your account, check your information and solve the problem. Large accounting software, factory software, and many more. There are many categories that this kind of products fit into. And I came across this very amazing image, and looking at the breakdown of this, you have an app, for example, Netflix. An enterprise team creates it. Netflix is a very big organization. The user that uses this is at home, and a user is a consumer. And to kind of give an idea of, like, what consumer applications are, I'll talk about this in detail later on, but they're apps that people, you have an option. You choose if an app isn't working for you, you kind of dump it if you don't want to. SharePoint is a Microsoft application. It's used by enterprises, like, across the globe. It's usually used in very large organizations. So you have lots of employees that use this application, and it's mostly an employee. They, clock into their work day to day. They use these tools to complete their different tasks and jobs. The users of an enterprise product are those who work in an enterprise and not the consumers on the streets. There's a very high chance that, if you're working within a company, like we work at different organizations like over here. And if your company tells you, hey, we're going to be using Skype for our video calling and stuff, you have no option, you have to use it. If your company insists on, hey, Notion is a cool tool out there, but sorry, you're going to be using Microsoft Word to take your notes, you're going to have to be using it. And this is not no shame on any product. I'm just giving a particular example. They're all amazing products in their own regards. And these are examples of the kind of people that work within this enterprise, lawyers, accountants, air traffic controllers, civil servants, network managers, nurses, and, the list is endless. And as enterprise user experience designers, we have the power to enable others to do their life's work. Now, within the enterprise space, people coming to work, they use our tools, the tools that we design. People, like, right now, like at the stage of life where we're in, we're working day to day to, pay our bills, do our amazing work. We use these tools day to day, and we're designing tools that enable people to do their work. And there are so many things that this involved, and I'll kind of go through it as we continue on the presentation. And things are changing within the enterprise space. Now, I showed earlier on the image of those, those amazing interfaces, but things are changing in enterprise space. People are realizing that, hey, I'm using amazing consumer tools at home. Why do I have to come into the office and use tools that, that kind of don't have the best experience for me? And enterprise users leave work and use consumer obstacles at the office. And right now, the challenge within industry and what, lots of people are trying to achieve right now is to reduce that blur, like to ensure that people, you can leave your consumer app and dive into an enterprise app and still be able to enjoy the experience of using these tools and not, be groaning and complaining on what you do. A couple of people, like, there have been different issues across the globe with, poorly designed applications. For example, like, there was a news that happened recently about like a bank that overpaid some of their customers ranging in millions of dollars. And the error simply came because, someone that was pressing an application did not get the experience of the interface and thereby made that error. So I'll jump right into like the differences between enterprise and consumer user experience design. And I've mentioned a couple of things earlier on, but just to kind of outline this more. And these are two applications within the same space, within the finance space. So the one on the left is Bloomberg, and the one on the right is Robinhood. So I don't know if you guys have heard about these tools before, or if you had experience with them. Mostly, you would have used the Robinhood tool. Like if you're someone like me who's trying to invest, I don't understand anything about investment, I'm just trying. I lean on Robinhood to do it pretty easy for me. If I don't want to use Robinhood, I can use Wealthsimple, another amazing application here in Canada. There are other applications out there that do this, but whereas Bloomberg is an application that is used by people like, core, like, power users within the finance industry to manage lots of stock and all that, and they need a lot of information to see. So it's just an example over here. And enterprise softwares are usually very highly specialized and complex. Like I gave examples earlier on of like, if a nurse is using your enterprise software, they need the software for their own purposes. There's a high chance you may not understand anything that's happening out there, but they need to solve their own solutions and they're going to use these tools. For example, if you have an accountant, accountants they work in specialized fields and they need the specialized software to complete their daily tasks. The context of use and the needs of enterprise users are very different from those of consumer-facing applications. If you're using your Netflix, like after this conversation, after this meeting, most likely, I'll settle in on my couch, put on some Netflix, maybe even use Disney Plus. But at work, I have to use these tools, like to do my work. I'm sitting down on my desk, probably in front of a monitor or multiple monitors, using these tools. And enterprise projects are commissioned by people who might not be the actual users. And this happens a lot. Like I spoke earlier on in my first experience within the enterprise space, I was in a meeting with people that, they've been working at the company for years. They are senior people in the industry, commissioning a product that's a junior, first year, junior mid-level person will be using. The people talking about this problem and, cashing out the big bucks to create this product, they most likely will not use this. They're just going to pay for it to do work. And there are many reasons why that might happen in the industry. Like, for example, sometimes it might be true, like, some like bureaucracy and all that. It depends. And in the consumer world, like I mentioned earlier on, the users have options. Whereas in enterprise world, users don't have an option. If your company says, hey, like, as designers, your company tells you we're using Figma, then Figma is that what everybody uses. If you're using Sketch, that's what everybody uses. If you're using Teams, like, shout out to everyone here using Teams to chat, then your company uses Teams. If you use Slack, that's what everybody uses. And if you're using like a Pigeon, then that's what everybody is going to be using at that point in time. Hopefully nobody uses a Pigeon to send messages. And as a designer in the enterprise space, your work will be under NDA, tight lock and key. Like I have worked with the enterprise space, but I've signed some NDAs, and because I work for these huge companies, if I put my work out there, they have the money to sue me. And I don't think I have any suing insurance right now. So it's, your work is under lock and key. And that's why you hardly find, if you are doing such an enterprise space, it's really very hard to, try these tools out. It's either they're within like a huge paywall or some very B2B security, or designers that talk about this work, their portfolios are usually under lock and key because you can't see the work out there. And this then drives into the other point. If you're working within the enterprise space, it can be really very hard to pull inspiration from competitors, because most times there aren't really many competitors in that space, because it's a very niche space. Competitors can be few, far, and in between, and you can't, you might not easily be able to go to, just online and look for the interface of these softwares. And another thing also too is, which I realized from my experience, you will most likely not use the product you're designing for. So you must likely use the product you're designing for. You might not, your grandma won't call you saying they're using your products. It's a very niche space. So most times, like, you're working in a very complex space, you're really trying to understand the space, but at the end of the day, you are not the user. So you don't make decisions for the user because you are not the user in any way. And one also very thing I love about the enterprise space is your users are very eager to give you feedback. So in the companies that, in the companies I've worked for, actually within the enterprise space, the users use this tool day to day. If you talk to them and say, hey, I'm trying to improve the way you do your work, they're always happy to talk to you. They're happy to give you ideas. You can literally because enterprise products are used by internal teams, whether in your company or if you're in a B2B service, if you talk to them and say you want to improve their software, they're happy to talk to you. Back before COVID, you could literally just go to the next floor and talk to somebody, do a usability test. It was pretty much easy to do that. And of course, there's lots of bureaucracy in the enterprise space because of the kind of the way it's mostly top down, so lots of bureaucracy, lots of different walls to kind of fly through. And let's say, for example, you need to make decisions. In some companies, although things are changing, decision-making might be really very slow because someone has to approve, then that person's manager has to approve, and, kind of gets down the line. And yeah. And I also want to quickly talk about some of the unique challenges that we find within the enterprise space. Now, a lot of people have experience designing for consumer apps. Okay, designing for your app that a user downloads to help them to track something here and there. You download an app that helps people track their fitness. People download the application in the App Store, or they go to the web application and use it. Within the enterprise experience, some designers say things like, I want to make the experience of users very easy. And in the process of making things very easy, we tend to simplify things. But in the UX space, you simplify with caution. And I put a part, there's a UX law from Tesla, and he said for any system, there's a certain amount of complexity which cannot be reduced. And because these applications are very, I wish I had lots of images to show. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of images to show, but there's a certain complexity that you can't reduce for. And what then happens is, in the aim of trying to make life easy for the user, you hide information that is pertinent for a user's work. And what you're doing is you're causing more friction for the users, and they can't even complete their own work. That's one thing over there. And in the onboarding experience for users, especially in consumer applications, we have these very nice tools, very nice wizards that tell the user, hey, you can do this here. Click next, skip or close, and the user dives right into the application and starts to do amazing stuff. Unfortunately, you might have a product tour, but they can be very simplistic and they won't cover the whole product functionality. So you might end up having to work with a team that has an help center, like documentation, to really let the user know how to do stuff. Like, I'm sure we've used applications. Like an example is I was recently working on something on Premiere Pro to edit a video. I haven't done it in years. I knew they had the feature. All I just did was just Google somewhere, find a tutorial, and get the work done. And that happens most of the time. And it's not a bad thing if you can actually simplify it in a way that the user can get from point A to point B. And within the enterprise phase, you have non-linear flows. They usually involve multiple steps, multiple roles, like different people. A lot of people are using the same software, the same application, the same interface. And you have to design your application in a way that anyone, any persona that you're designing for can come to the application and use it clearly. Ben, who is, a junior nurse in the hospital, can use the application, and a senior consultant who can come to the application, and they should all be able to achieve their goals. And the goal here is to create a consistent and recognizable experience throughout the product, so that users know how to, when they come into the application, they know how to do things. And how you kind of uncover this, from my own experience, just to add some notes here, is by really understanding the mental models of the user, how the users do their work. And you also have to work with your stakeholders to plan out the flow, discuss all the stuff in there. I'll touch down on that, later on. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. If something is not broken, most times don't fix it, and try to work with the user's mental model as much as we can. And how I mentioned is, I'll give an example. In designing your application, you might do research and realize, oh, my users use Excel, for example, and there's a way to do things in Excel. There are patterns that work. Now, Excel might not, of course, Excel is a very application that multiple people can use. If there's a way that users have found a way to do pivot tables to filter out the information they are seeing on those tables, can you take that pattern and try to have something in your work also so users can achieve the same function? If possible, if you can even use very similar representations to ensure that a user's mental model clicks, it feels like second nature to them. You might want to do something else that's really very nice. It might work fine, but for the user, it might not work for them in a particular state. So it's not every time you invent the wheel and create something new. You can work with old patterns, put them in your work, make them, enhance them a little bit so the user can know what they need to do. And enterprise users are slow to change. And I'll give an example. So for these users, most likely, unless it's a new industry, they have tools they're using already. Most of this industry, they've been around for a very long while. People have been working here for a long while. And in advocating for a better experience and change, you have to really be very careful about introducing new features and all that, because it can cause sort of friction. Now, in the consumer space, when a company releases a new feature, for experienced designers here, people that can track those changes, you most likely will notice a dip in users using your product, then it starts to rise and increase. Whereas in enterprise space, time is of the essence. A dip in productivity of your users down the line might realize in the company, missing on opportunities, people not able to do their work. And the users of enterprise, they do repetitive tasks every day, over and over again. We do the same thing. And an example I can remember right now is, as designers, we use design tools like Figma and Sketch. The shortcuts for me as a designer to drag and duplicate items, I press my key, and if I'm using the Windows or Mac, you press the Alt or Option key to duplicate and drag and stuff. If Figma ends up changing that, if you are used to it, there's a lot of friction and you will not be as good as doing your work. So that's kind of the closest example I can think of in this scenario. And how can we make a difference as as designers in the enterprise space? So one thing is, as always, be a voice for the user, advocate for the user, but do not ignore the business and stakeholder goals. Now, I mentioned earlier on that, it's more in most enterprise spaces, it's more top bottom, the businesses know what they want. You have to be able to balance those particular two things to come up with your solution. Even later on down the line, as you're preparing your roadmap for design, which is the list of things that you want to build, you have to factor this in, because stakeholders are really very important. And also to building relationships is really super important in this particular field, which brings us to the second point. Your stakeholders, they know so much about the problem space than you will ever know. Like if I work in healthcare, I'm not a doctor. If I work in construction, I'm not an engineer. I don't know how any of these things work. The stakeholders really know a lot. And it's very important as a designer in this space, to build, identify your key stakeholders and build relationships really very early. And I'll give an example that happened to me. I was having a stakeholder interview during my research session with this pretty amazing senior person at the company. He had been there for a very long while. And he was a huge person in his own field. And I was coming as this, this designer just over there. And he was the kind of person that he had a mindset that, okay, we don't want people in my team or my department to change how they work. So it was really like a stumbling block in that particular experience. And it was really very important to win him over to ensure we're going to move forward. Did I win him over? I didn't actually. The meeting didn't go well. It was very horrible. But luckily, I was able to escalate for a little bit, and we found another session to say, hey, sorry for taking me off the wrong foot. let's try this again. So those kind of things, they happen. And it's important to involve your users early and often. Normally in the space of design, this is very important, but because you're working in a space where people know more than you ever know, it's very important to get, like I mentioned, these are enterprise users within your industry. It's good to have subject matter expert or people that know about the space and get insights. Run your design decisions through them. Ask them, does this fit within your workflow? What do you think? And that way you can get feedback early. You can, get, test often on your work so that your users can give you input and you can, kind of fix your flows and make things better. And it's also very important to consider users at all stages. And this is one very key skill that is good, especially if you're coming up in industry, to be able to think about the problem space and really think, how will multiple users, I think instead of having a tunnel vision and narrowing on one persona, how will multiple users use this application? If there's a new user coming to your tool, how can you onboard them quickly to understand the application? For power users, do they know where everything is? Do they have everything they need? If you have a manager, for example, that's just reviewing work, can they easily access what they need to do? And if you have just like a junior user, can everyone in this chain, because it's the same platform, can you design ways for each user to achieve what they want? It might be through customization, it might be through changing of views, however you want it to be, but each person needs to be able to do what they need to do on this application. And your entire product should really feel cohesive and consistent. And users should be able to predict how to use different features based on how the system works. So in an enterprise product, it's really very important that if you're using some particular patterns, a user knows that, oh, if I click on this funnel icon, for example, that should bring up a filter. And the filter should be able to allow me to check information on my very huge table and narrow down what I'm looking for. That's an example. There are many examples in between, but I can't remember everything now, but this is one thing that is really very important. And wrapping up this quickly, because I'll also love, if you have questions here, hopefully, we have a pigeon chat, a pigeonhole link there. You can put your questions there. And I'll just give some few words about wrapping up. And as enterprise designers, I hope this conversation is more like an introductory conversation, but we have the power to make the future of work exciting and really very promising. One thing that really makes me happy is the fact that I can design products that when people resume to work every day, they're happy. And, when launching some of these products, the feedback you get from users is the fact that, hey, I was really able to wow, we love this application. We're excited to use your application. It's really very important. And people don't have to come to work daily and, they feel like the experience is not good. We should blur the line between these two applications. So a user can use a consumer app and switch back into an enterprise app, and the experience just keeps getting better. It's very innovative and really very nice. And I have this quote that I got from an article that an amazing designer also wrote. Her name is Ichen, and she said, our users already have their hands full trying to do their jobs. And as enterprise designers, we can help lighten the load by clearing away, some of these obstacles that don't allow these people to do their work. And I think that's really very awesome, in my opinion, just speaking out for people that don't have a choice but to use the different tools they're using. And we should design software that lets humans be humans. And what this kind of means is most of the tools that are being designed in the enterprise space and industry, people are using legacy tools, some people not design, but, someone just put the tools down for the users and they have to use it. And it's more like a robot is using these tools, but we have, we can bring in our empathy and, our design thinking to design software that, will let people do their best work and be amazing in every way they can. And thank you so much. That is it from me. Thank you for listening to me talk for this minute. And if we have questions, we can dive into some of the questions, if any.
Thank you, Mosope. That was an amazing overview of enterprise design. And you guys, like Mosope said, this is just conversation number one. So feel free to book sessions with him on ADP List to learn more about enterprise design. And also make sure you tune into the rest of our Tech Hustle series to learn more. We do have some questions rolling in, quite a few. So I'm going to go with our most popular question, which is, if I am in an NDA as a designer in the enterprise space with a large organization, what are the best practices to showcase the work I do in my personal portfolio? It's a good one.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a very amazing question. And the enterprise space is, you're not able to submit your work for awards and all that. Your work can be in your portfolio, but preferably have it locked and read through the fine print of your NDA. Some companies usually mention that you can't even mention anything about the product. There are different ways to either blur sensitive information and blur sensitive information and all that within the particular space you're using. You can put your work there. Or there are two ways you can go about it. If you really want to talk about the work to the whole general community, you can just talk about some of the things you've learned and learnings, but you will not be able to share industry secrets, because if that goes out there, you have something, a lawsuit coming on you. And if you're applying for work and interview, your work can be under the lock and key, and you can share your password with either a recruiter or whoever you're applying to. They also understand that the work that you're showing it has an NDA, and just try to any sensitive information that relates to any person, that relates to anything in particular, any secret in the company, just try to mask it as much as you can, but you can still always talk about your work, especially out there or within an interview setting. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Moving on, we have a couple of questions that got similar votes. So I'm going to just choose a random one. What do you recommend if the enterprise doesn't allow or involve users for research? Have you ever encountered with that, Mosope?
Okay, I haven't come across that in my own work, but it depends on the enterprise you work with. So let's say, for example, it's really very hard to do work. And an example I think about is if you're a company designing for another company, and it's a very specialized field. What there's a particular project I was working on, and we didn't have access to, or we didn't really have much time to get to users and do all that. What we just requested from the the business unit that we're working with was, hey, can we have people that are subject matter experts, people that know about this field? And as a designer, you have to then determine, what kind of people are you looking for? In one of the projects I worked on, I talked to them, I said, hey, can you give me people that know about this field, because I don't know anything about it. And oh, I'll give you a manager somewhere, a senior manager, and based on my, the people I'm designing for, I need it to be kind of broad. So it's something you can recommend and, push back on them saying, hey, can we get people from these different fields? And I understand that might be a huge challenge, especially when working enterprise where you can access people. If you're working in a particular company and your users are within the company, it's something that you can easily do. If you're working business to business, then you have to work through your company, through your management, the top people in the line, to try to get people that at least can represent a small fraction that we are working with.
That was a very good and thorough answer. There's another one that rolled in that I absolutely love this question. So in enterprise, if you are designing consumer-facing products and you want to transition to enterprise, what are experiences or characteristics that signal to hiring managers that you can be successful in that space? I love that question.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I've seen people transition from consumer into enterprise. One key thing that I'll look out for, especially doing interviews, is the enterprise space is really it's a very complex space. One key thing is, can this designer, are you a person that can take information, you have to distill information and distill the information and get to a meaningful place to be able to start working from. Now, I'll give an example. In the enterprise space, people throw a lot of things at you, but I then break it down to realize that the problem space is really very similar. The user, the jobs to be done, you need to be able to analyze what the jobs to be done is, know what the user wants to do and how they want to achieve it. So I generally look out for people that even in whatever industry you're coming from, can you take information? Are you able to take it in, digest it, and try to bring out your own way of doing this particular thing in a way that makes sense to the user? That's one of the important skills. Other skills you can have that would help you on the job. Like I mentioned, it can be very hard to get inspiration on these applications because they're not out there. They have very few competitors. How I kind of overcame that challenge was to look at similar, look at the mental models. What products do these people use on a normal day? Are there ideas I can drive for me to make it better? Like taking into components, piecing it together and making your own experience in a way that's better. So for me, that's one of the most important things I look out for, the ability to take complex information, distill it out and, put it in a flow that really makes sense for the users.
So to piggyback off of that, I know we have quite a bit of junior designers attending tonight. So someone asked, what types of projects would hiring managers want to see if a junior designer wants to get into the enterprise design space?
Okay, there are two angles I can look at that. If it's a junior designer, we understand that this person is junior. They might not have worked in the enterprise space before, or they are new to the industry. And it's very hard to actually create a case study for like an accounting app. It's going to take a very long time for you to work on. But if you have applications, like, if you're able to design web applications, that is pretty amazing. Like, if you have that, I'd love to see that, how do you design the tables, the dashboards, and all that stuff. If you don't have that, it doesn't mean you can't enter into the industry. But have a product in your portfolio that shows that, you've been able to distill those complex informations, your thorough thinking is really very important. You understand how you iterated through your work and how you solve that problem. Because at the end of the day, whether you're designing a consumer app or like, an enterprise app, that thinking is one thing that really helps a whole lot because you're having to design for multiple people in one screen or one set of flows. So how do you distill that information? So, I've been in the process where we hired, junior designers new to the field, and this is what really helped them to stand out when we're kind of bringing them on board.
Thank you. That's definitely going to help a lot of the junior designers in the chat. So someone else asked, in enterprise space, we design for specialized users. So what's the scope of training the users to use the application? That's a really great question.
Yeah, it's a really very great question. And, I like the fact that you use the word training. Your enterprise application, you can design the application that is very easy to use. It's based on the user's models. You have some very key points, but it's also very important to have either your help center or guides that the users can go through. Most enterprise companies actually, they prepare training guides and they kind of force everyone to go to the training and all that stuff. It's normal. But do not lean on the, users have training, they'll watch the video and they'll understand the application. No, you have to strike that balance. A new user should, because efficiency is one particular goal, and there's so many goals in enterprise space, but how ramped up can a person be? Do you want your new users to spend 1 month, 2 months trying to watch your trainings and figure out your software? Or do you want something like, I can pick up, like we use different applications and they have manuals, but you should be able to kind of figure it out. And if you then need help, you can then go back to your training to watch stuff. So that's what kind of way. We'll have training guides, we'll have documentation, nice videos that show how the application works, but also to, as you design your application, design in a way that if a new user comes on board, they can kind of do some of the basic things and figure things out by using similar patterns that they're kind of used to before. So that's how I would go about that.
I have a question for you, Mosope,
Okay.
not in the chat. So what's the impact of designing things improperly in enterprise design?
Okay, that's a great question. The impact of designing things properly, it's in 2 phases. You can design things properly and kind of get away with it, but it's not the right way, because if you're working in a company that doesn't really care about their users, you can just design something, put it out there. But down the line, where this has to affect is the users of application, they're using your applications day to day, doing the same things day to day for multiple. Okay, I'll give, for example, like a user that wants to, that works in the bank, that's trying to resolve a customer's problem. Most likely how they approach this tool is to search for a user's name, click on the user's profile, view the information, and then try to rectify information and save. That's a simple flow. Now, for every call the customer agent gets, they have to go through that same process. What happens is efficiency is really very key. If you can save, like, the time for user to, like, the number of clicks and time for user to go to an application, if you can shave it down from, let's say, 10 minutes to even 8 minutes, that 2 minutes difference, if a user does the same task 500 times in a day, that's 2 minutes, that's 500, that's 1,000 minutes in a day, times 5 days in a week, times 4 days in the 4 weeks in a month, and all that. Efficiency is one thing that might, kind of go down the line if not properly implemented. Another thing also too is, instead of users to actually do the work they need to do, they might be doing manual tasks, like trying to figure out the application, trying to understand something, which shouldn't be for them. Down the line, you might end up with users that are frustrated because they can't do the right work. Their performance is reduced. Some might even have to work extra hours, because what should take them 1 hour is now taking them like almost 1.5 hours or 2 hours. And, it's not something you want at the end of the day. Satisfaction will kind of really, really deep. So, yeah.
I love that answer. And we just have to remember, when designing for enterprise, we're helping to make other people do their best work ever. So we want to be mindful of being efficient. So with that being said, I know you mentioned, and it's another one of my questions, I know you mentioned that most likely you won't be using any of the things that you design. So, but have you had any feedback from, how your work has directly impacted a person, a working person, or an enterprise?
Okay, yeah. Within the enterprise space, for different companies, like, in the consumer space, you might be able to get hard metrics, like, see, plug in different tools to your application and see different matrices and gauge things. In the enterprise space, because you handle, there's a huge security constraint and all that, it may not be the easiest to plug in tools to your application to be able to track some things. So, some companies have done it properly if they have relationship with very huge vendors, whereas most times you get qualitative information. So people people being excited about the product, people wanting to use it, feedback generally within the company, those kind of things help you to know that people are really excited for your particular product. And, most enterprise users in the past, they've used tools that it kind of fails them. And if you deliver a very amazing experience, they'll be the one to sing, to talk about this product. Wow, we're having a product that really makes a lot of sense. People will be open to giving you feedback to make the application better. And it's just one of the ways to know that you're actually doing something that is really very good. From the point when you are doing your user acceptance testing, you can, and so a UAT, or user acceptance testing, is a way before you release an application, you have users actually use it, and you have different benchmarks that you check to ensure that it meets a particular standard. From there, you can start seeing some insights to see, like, the impact of what you've actually done. So it's really very rewarding when those kind of things come in, to see that your product is making an impact on someone.
Yeah, those KPIs are super important to look at, and definitely rewarding to see at the end of a project. So we'll take maybe 2 more questions before we wrap up. There's one question in here that I thought was interesting. So it says, as a product designer, how do you go about bridging the brand storyline with the brand visuals to create a consistency between them and to ensure that they tell the same story and convey the same message?
Okay, that's really very amazing. Brand visuals, brand storyline, to ensure that they tell the same message. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Now, coming from an experience within branding, especially within your product, if you understand what exactly this company does and how they want to be seen from the from the outset. So if you're having a new product that's fresh off the start, and you're the designer tasked with building these things properly. Understanding the brand vision, like, where the brand is particularly going, it helps you in things like the tone of your messaging, how you communicate things. It's really very important. There's a lot of work to be done within your stakeholders. So I'll assume you're working within a product team. You have different stakeholders, and the brand itself cannot just live alone. It also lives within the people that work within the industry and the enterprise. Everyone seems to have a vision of what this application should be. And as a designer on this team, you can help to direct the vision of where this product is going to. So in terms of like, the look and feel, some things within enterprise product might be very consistent in terms of, for example, the colors. If you work in an organization whose color, their main color is red, most likely the stakeholders might want to see that red being showcased across your applications. So it helps to feel that consistency that, oh, I'm logging into the application of this bank, for example. But as a designer, how do you tell that story? Do you, use red backgrounds everywhere? Do you make it subtle? What are some of the other complementary tones and nuances that you want in the application? Also, too, if you're working, depending on the company you're working for, if it's an enterprise, you might design a consumer tool that tells you, hi, good morning, I am Elham. How do you do today? And it welcomes into the application. In the enterprise space, your tone might not match that because it is more corporate and it's a much more corporate environment. So it's something you have to really watch out for. So definitely there's a way to balance the brand vision, the brand guideline, what you see, and you have to work with your other team members to translate that and ensure that at every point it still feels like an app. Hopefully your enterprise has its own guidelines, as most huge companies do, working along with your brand team to define that. And as a product person, where you need to deviate, you can deviate a little bit and make yourself firm in that space. So that's what I think so far, just right off my head.
That was a great answer. And you guys, as we wrap up, there's a ton of questions that we didn't get to, but feel free to make a one-on-one with Mosope. I see one question in the chat from Meeble, so we'll answer that one. How do you handle mandatory regulatory policies that create bad user experience?
That's a very good question. And there's so many policies in the industry that, it's a very tough cookie to crumble, because the challenge is it's mostly top down. Information comes from the top. In this particular space, there are a couple of things you can do. First of all, like looking at it, is it a battle you're ready to fight, especially if it's something that is very crucial to your users? You have to really be armed with a lot of information to go there and say, hey, you're telling us to use these patterns, but there's a detriment to it. That's the first thing. Also, another thing I'm kind of thinking about is if you understand where the users are coming from. I'll give an example. I have experience working within an accounting firm, and accountants have a way. There's a particular way they, there's something there's a sheet they write information in, and they're used to using blue pen to write. I can't remember my economics name, but blue pen to write maybe credits, red to write debits and all that. And it's really very important. Now, red might, for you might be like a color of danger, but in their own workflow and mind, it's something that they are used to, and that's how it should be done. So if you look at those particular policies, are they things you can fight for? That's the first thing. If you can fight, push ahead. If you can't fight, are there ways that you can mitigate this particular thing to ensure that if the experience is not a great experience, does it still follow some of the heuristic principles? Can a user diagnose their way out? Does the user know what next to do? You understand? Are you using patterns that actually makes so much sense in that way? And ultimately, if all else fails, and there are times when industry that you just look at it like, hey, there's a lot of bureaucracy on top of me. I might have to understand the business goals and understand this, let it get out there. But then as you keep building your application, you can then now try to get more feedback. Definitely, whatever is the bad experience, you get lots of user feedback and data telling you that it's not the right way. And you can then take it back to the business saying, hey, I actually have data that says what we built in the last half, it's not working properly. Can we put in the roadmap to improve it? So that's one way.
All righty. Well, thank you, Shape. We're gonna come to a close with this session, but You really taught a really great lesson about enterprise design. Like we mentioned, everyone, if you have more questions, feel free to book a one-on-one with Mosope. And also, please write about your experience at Tech Hustle and put at ADP list hashtag Tech Hustle. And with that, we're gonna end this session. Have a really good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you for listening to me speak.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. ADP team, do we use the breakout rooms or?
Yeah, I can create some of those.
Awesome.